Welcome to yet another episode of Chess TV. In this week's Chess Historical episode, Professor Ronny Johansson will talk about the history of the Junior World Championship. In this week's chess puzzle, I'll challenge you with a checkmate in 3 moves. Albert continues to analyze the connection between chess and Machiavelli, and Adriana and Alfred pick up where they left the Slav opening last week in the opening school. Before it's time to hand over to Albert, let's take a look at what's happening in the chess world lately. Chinese Grandmaster Ni Hua won the 14th edition of the Dubai Open, which ended last week. It was actually a shared first place between 5 players after 9 rounds, but thanks to a slightly better tiebreak point, Ni Hua could claim the gold and flourish with a performance rating of 2770, that is 120 elo points more than his current rating. Congratulations! Between the 11th and 19th of May, the 30th edition of the Liechtenstein Open will be played in the capital, Liechtenstein. Last year's winner, Thomas Livaski, is according to the starting field not participating, but so is instead 10 other grandmasters and more than 120 participants. Read more about the tournament on schach.li. Another tournament that kicks off in May is the US Championships in St. Louis, more specifically on May the 7th to the 20th. Event organizers have brought back a very popular and exciting online component to the event this year, Fantasy Chess. Chess fans worldwide make selections and predictions about the US Championships. Fantasy Chess is free to play, and participants will be able to sign up, build their team, and follow all the action through uschesschamps.com. For each of the groups, one picks the player he thinks will score best and thereafter collects 1 fantasy point for each point the player earns. One also selects the player one thing will win the 2012 US Champion and US Women's Championship. Whoever collects the most fantasy points wins amazing prizes, so visit uschesschamps.com/fantasychess. And finally, last Tuesday, superstar Magnus Carlsen guested the American Emmy-awarded television show Colbert Report, discussing chess strategy and fame, among many other things. A fantastic interview that you really should take a look at, which you can find at www.colbertnation.com. Now it's time for Albert. Here we go.
You can get quite far in life with a good reputation. When others speak well of you, you don't have to prove to people who you are or what you can do. I remember when I played chess as a kid and would be paired against someone with an established name, automatically I'd become more careful. I took additional care before risking anything and was always anxious to do something rash. That's how it is in all areas of life. Important people have rumors and gossip about how they are and behave towards their subjects and friends. Generous or greedy, cruel or merciful, unreliable or loyal, combative and courageous or cowardly, modest or arrogant, honest or deceitful, tough-minded or sensitive, faithful or doubting. Well, there are many different epithets that can attribute a prince. One would think that a prince should strive to achieve all positive attributes, such as being known for his generosity, loyalty, and honesty. But the truth is that it actually can be better for a prince to have a reputation for being unreliable and cruel, because who would dare such a person? Machiavelli writes that there is a huge difference between how you live and how you should live, and that those who neglect what must be done for what ought to be done learn how to perish rather than how to save themselves. And that is, according to Machiavelli, because of the fact that a person who constantly wants to be good in a world of people who are not, simply won't make it. A prince who wants to stay in power can't always be good. You have to learn to balance when you can be good and when the situation simply does not allow it. It may seem that Machiavelli's conclusion is a bit too barbaric, that he gives legitimacy to evil. But isn't it more honest to say that as a prince, you can't always have noble motives if you want to stay in power, rather than to start creating arguments of a greater good, like that you sometimes have to sacrifice some individual's life or happiness for the sake of the collective. an argument that many later philosophers and politicians have used. So, in summary, Machiavelli says that you should not bother with a bad reputation that comes from the vices without which a prince would hardly keep himself in power. All in all, you realize that attributes that seem like virtues would lead to the prince's doom if they were respected, while those that seem vicious actually give him security and prosperity.
Welcome to a new episode of The Opening School. In this week's episode, we'll continue with analyzing the Slav defense, and we will pick up from where we ended last week. In our analysis of the Slav defense, we've come to reach this position. A total of 5 moves have been played, and Alfred, what can you tell us about this position?
Already at first sight, you see that the position is quite complex, and playing black in this position, it can be a bit difficult to figure out what to do about your c4 pawn, especially after moves like e3 or knight to e5. The probably most important thing to know in this situation is simply that the pawn is lost, and that black instead should concentrate on developing the rest of his position.
Keep in mind that black is already a pawn up, so losing the pawn on c4 won't lead to a material disadvantage. You mentioned that white can choose between e3 and knight to e5 in this position. How is that decision made? What should be taken into consideration when deciding what to play here?
Well, these two moves are considered equally strong, but they do lead the game into 2 separate lines. White's 6th move e3 is a calm move which goes straight to the point. Black cannot protect his pawn on c4, and thus there is no reason not to capture it. And if you should capture it, why not develop a piece in the same time? You should not trick yourself into believing that this simple move will lead to a simple position. As I said, the position is very complex, and by introducing yet another piece into the game, white only heightens the level of complexity. Knight to e5 is a more ambitious move. White plays to conquer the entire center by playing f3 followed by e4, and if white succeeds, it's often considered that white has won the opening stage. Of course, black has some good answers against this line, and the game often turns into very unclear positions.
The choice between these 2 moves depends on your own playing style and preferences. This varies from player to player, and you have to make the choice for yourself. In this situation, you choose either a complex positional game or a complex tactical game. Either way, it's important to analyze the variations in depth, and it can be very hard to choose which line fits you the best right away. My tip is to look up some games where this variation has been played, and this will show you the different ways the games will usually pan out and what variations might occur. We won't go deeper into analyzing any specific games this time, but Alfred, can you show us the most common continuation after white's e3?
Of course. After white's e3, black should play e6. Once again, I feel the need to stress the point that black should give up on the c4 pawn, and that bishop to e6 should be avoided. This partly since the move loses a tempo. We did play bishop to f5 after all, but also since this move is simply bad. The bishop will be placed in a square from which it is no future, and the only thing it accomplishes is that it blocks the f8 bishop from developing properly. This is why black should follow white's example and play e6. White can now capture on c4, and black answers by playing bishop to b4, after which white castles and black follows.
So far, we've seen how both sides have been building up their positions by developing their pieces. The position seems to have become both calmer and less complex. Is this really the case, or is this just the calm before the storm, so to speak?
Well, the position does look calm, doesn't it? A storm can of course occur, and you can never guarantee that nothing will happen, and you'll have to be on guard. But with that said, no hurricanes usually spring forth from this position. Simply said, this position is calm, but that doesn't mean that it won't be complex. White can from this position choose between queen to e2 and knight to h4, and actually these 2 moves also lead the game into 2 very separate lines. After queen to e2, we notice that the white plan is to play e4, a move which black should try to block. Otherwise, white will get the full control over the center. But even so, many players allow the white advancement in the center.
How come?
Well, that is a good question. I guess you could say it's a bit like feeding the greedy until they eat themselves to death, but the easiest way to explain it will simply be to show you how the game will continue. Now black usually plays knight b to d7, against which white plays e4, followed by black's bishop to g6. If we take a closer look at the position, we see that white has a territorial advantage, which was created by the conquering of the center. But we also see that the same center is white's greatest weakness. It has grown bigger than white can control, and at this point it is under especially strong pressure from the black pieces. One should also note that white's previous a4 left a hole in b4, which makes it virtually impossible for white to successfully pull off an attack on the queen's side.
As we said, this position seems to be very calm, but even so, it is extremely complex. How does black continue here? Right now, black has a solid position which is practically impenetrable, and simultaneously, black has an attack against the white center. The strategy for black in this position is to balance these two factors. If one of them were to disappear because of careless play, the black position would rapidly become two-dimensional and fall apart before too soon. So, in conclusion, the Slav defense is a variation which allows for many different possibilities, and this in turn allows you to find the variation which fits you the best. There are few things as difficult as playing a game where you are forced to adapt to a playing style that doesn't suit you. With that, we end this week's episode of The Opening School. We'll be back again next week with more on the Slav defense, so see you then.
And so it's once again time for this week's chess puzzle. In this puzzle, white checkmates black in 3 moves, and this is without a doubt a tricky puzzle with a not so obvious solution. The puzzle is taken from chess.com, and you have 1 minute to find the 3 checkmating moves. Good luck! Well, the first thing we must note here is that black is almost in a stalemate. Black can just move his h-pawn, which means that we can't capture or block the pawn. A checkmate plan could be to play rook g4, rook e4, rook e1, and finally king f2 checkmate, but this plan requires 4 moves, plus black will actually be in a stalemate due to the fact that his h-pawn won't be able to go any further. So this plan just does not work. The shortcut rook e3, rook e1, and king f2, which obviously is 3 moves, does not work either because of the black pawn on d4 and his possibility to capture our rook on e3. We simply need a different approach in order to solve this puzzle. Instead of going around our 2 pawns on g2 and h2 with our rooks, we might just open up the pawn structure to thereby enable our rook against the black king. The easiest way to do so is to let or forcing black to capture our h2 pawn with the king. After rook h4, pawn h5, rook e4, and king captures on h2, we have a checkmate by playing rook h3. But there is of course a possibility for black not to capture the pawn, but instead of playing pawn h4, and after that there is no checkmate here in 1 move. So the question is therefore, can we force black to capture our h2 pawn? If our rook would capture or block the black pawn, this would be a stalemate, well, as long as our rook is guarding our h-pawn. An interesting solution would be to block the black h-pawn and then block our own guarding of the h2 square by playing with our h-pawn. So what we'll do is to play rook h5. Black must respond with pawn h6, and then after pawn h4, black can only reply with king h2. Now the position is just as we wanted it to, so our third move is of course rook h3 checkmate. I hope you managed to find the solution, but even if you didn't, you don't have to worry because you know that you'll get another chance to show off on next week. But before that, it's time for some chess history with Professor Arne Johansson, so enjoy!
A fairly long time ago I talked about the 1969 Junior World Championship in chess, which was held in Stockholm. The Junior Championships, that is for players under the age of 20, started in 1951, and there is quite a bit of information about it on the web, even on Wikipedia. The person behind the first tournament was William Ritson Morey. The first event was held in Coventry and Birmingham in the summer of 1951, and it was the later well-known Borislav Ivkov from Yugoslavia that became the first official junior world champion. Up until 1973, the tournament was held every second year and has since then been organized in different parts of the world every year. This year's championship will be held in Athens. In the beginning, the winner was given the title of International Master, but it was later realized that the competition was so tough that the winner instead was given the title of Grandmaster. 4 winners have become senior world champions. They are Boris Spassky, who won in 1955 and whom we see here greeting Ulf Andersson in 1969. Anatoly Karpov, who won in Stockholm, Garry Kasparov, who won in 1980, and the present world champion Viswanathan Anand, who won the Junior World Championships already in 1987. As expected, it has been the Soviet Union that has dominated these events and has 9 victories. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have together taken 7 victories. So one can say that the old Soviet states have won the Junior World Championships approximately every third time. USA has also been quite visible with 6 champions, but Fischer is not in that group. One that can be found in this group is Yasser Seirawan. The next nation in the competition of number of victories is Yugoslavia, where the chess has for a long time been an important part of the culture. They have 4 champions, of which Ivkov was the first one. Argentina and India have 3 victories each, and with India we could perhaps interpret it as a trend that 2 of the victories have been taken since 2004. Iceland and Denmark can be proud of 1 champion each. Kurt Hansson won in 1984 and Helge Gretarsson won in 1994. Bent Larsen and Fredrik Olofsson participated in the first championships, but neither of them managed to win. Another Nordic player that is missing among the winners is Magnus Carlsen. When the championship was arranged in Stockholm 1969, it was Julia Kaplan from Puerto Rico who was the reigning champion. He also participated here, but it was Anatoly Karpov who won, and then proceeded to become the senior world champion in 1975 when Fischer refused to compete. Sweden was represented by Dan Uddenfelt and primarily by Ulf Andersson, who was at the start of his real chess career at this time. I personally was there and took a photo of the game between the third seed American Kenneth Rogoff and Ulf Andersson, who was seeded as number 10. We can see Ulf contemplating a position where he already had an advantage, and later he elegantly managed to win the game. and finished 5th in the tournament. Kenneth Rogoff has in recent times been seen in the Swedish business newspapers giving comments about the world economy. In 1982, one started a separate competition for girls below the age of 20. The Soviet states have there been even more dominating, but a country that has started to be a serious competitor there is China, and I wouldn't be surprised if they soon come up with a candidate that can win the Open Junior World Championships. Well, we end here for today, but we'll return with a new theme next week, so see you then.
Well, this was all for our 367th episode. I would once again like to urge you all to watch the interview with Magnus Carlsen, a great end of this week's Chess TV episode. So see you again next week. Bye.